Hello, my name's Adrian, and the night she shoved 5 crumpled dollars into my hand, in front of everyone, I realized something crueler than humiliation. I was never truly loved, just measured. That night wasn't the worst part. It was what followed. The lies, the betrayal, my own family turning against me, siding with her. They said I wasn't enough, that I'd never be. But what they didn't know is I had quietly built everything they thought I lacked. And one day, she was the one begging me not to walk away. But by then, was it too late? The valet had just taken Clarissa's car when we stepped under the golden light spilling from the steakhouse windows. Houston's humid night clung to my collar as we walked in. Inside, everything gleamed. Mahogany tables polished to a mirror shine, chandeliers throwing soft halos over laughing couples, a low hum of jazz coming from somewhere near the bar. Waiters in black vests glided past like they were on rails, carrying trays that smelled of butter and rare wine. Clarissa moved through the entrance as if she owned the place. She didn't even glance at the host when he greeted us, just handed over her coat with a flick of her wrist. I trailed behind, my palms sweating inside my jacket pocket. I could afford this dinner 100 times over, but the room still made me feel like a trespasser. Years of being the youngest son, the one expected to learn humility, had trained me to stay small even when my bank account said otherwise. We were seated at a corner table. The server set down 2 menus and asked if we wanted sparkling or still water. Clarissa didn't look up from her phone. "Still, and bring the wine list," she said. Her tone was flat, like she was giving instructions to a delivery boy. I smiled awkwardly at him, murmuring a thank you. For a moment, I tried to focus on the scent of seared meat drifting from the kitchen. Maybe tonight would be different. Maybe she'd finally see me as more than a convenience. I'd met Clarissa 2 years earlier at a conference in Dallas. She'd been charming then, ambitious, someone I thought I could build a life with. I still believed patience could change her edges, even as she scrolled and smirked across the table. She ordered the most expensive ribeye without glancing at the menu, tossed the server a dismissive medium rare, and went back to texting. When I asked about her day, she gave me short answers, eyes flicking to the couple at the next table who were clinking glasses. "You always ask the same things," she muttered. I tried to smooth it over. "Just want to hear about you," I said quietly. "Then listen harder," she shot back, loud enough for the man at the next table to raise an eyebrow. I felt heat crawl up my neck but kept my hands steady. Years of swallowing insults from older brothers, bosses, relatives. It had become second nature. I still thought, maybe if I stayed calm, she'd calm. Down too. Our food arrived, steak sizzling, sides piled high. Clarissa barely touched hers, preferring to scroll. She criticized the waiter for bringing her steak a shade too pink, then waved him away before he could answer. I apologized for her under my breath. He gave me a small, sympathetic nod. When the bill arrived in its leather folder, she leaned back and smiled, but not at me. "Let's see what tonight's worth," she said, sliding the check across. $150. Nothing to me. Everything to the story she'd built about me being a hanger-on. She reached into her clutch, pulled out a $5 bill, and slapped it on top of the check. "That's all you're worth. 5 lousy dollars," she said, her voice ringing out like a gavel. Heads turned. Forks paused midair. The jazz from the bar seemed to fade. I froze. My throat went dry. My hands felt suddenly too big for my body. Shame crawled under my skin, hot and raw. Every pair of eyes in that room weighed more than the chandeliers. I could see an older couple at the next table whispering, the woman shaking her head. A man in a Stetson muttered, "Poor guy." Clarissa leaned closer, smiling like she just won something. "You should be grateful I even showed up," she whispered, but loud enough for others to hear. I gripped the white napkin in my lap until it wrinkled, the cloth twisting in my fist like a knot I couldn't untie. The napkin felt heavy, like all the years I'd spent being underestimated. I loosened my grip, and it fell to the floor with a soft sound, almost lost under the murmurs around us. I wanted to speak, tell the room, tell her, tell myself, that her picture of me was a lie, that the account I'd built quietly for years could buy every table here dinner for a month. But the habit of silence held me still. I could feel my younger self at family dinners, the one always given the broken chair, whispering, "Stay quiet. Don't make it worse." The waiter approached slowly, eyes flicking between Clarissa's smile and my stillness. He didn't pick up the check yet, as if waiting for a cue. I sat there, pulse drumming in my ears, watching the $5 bill lying like a slap across the leather folder. I realized then this wasn't just a bad date. This was a message, a declaration of how she saw me, and maybe how others had always seen me. Something in my chest shifted, not a spark of anger, but a weight of recognition. That night, as I sat there with everyone watching, I realized this wasn't just a date. It was the start of a war I didn't even know I was fighting. By the time I got back to my apartment, it was almost 1 a.m. I didn't even remember the drive, just the sound of my own breathing and the quiet ache pounding in my temples. Houston was still awake in patches, the glow of downtown bouncing off my windshield as if trying to pretend nothing had happened. I let myself in, dropped my keys on the counter, and stood in the entryway like I'd forgotten how to live in my own home. The lights were off, the air stale, the silence too loud. I slipped off my shoes, walked toward the couch, and tossed my jacket over the armrest. The $5 bill in my pocket felt like it was burning a hole through the fabric. I sat down, but couldn't stay still. My legs wouldn't stop moving. I kept seeing her face, smirking, victorious, every time I blinked. Every word she spat out at that restaurant looped through my mind like bad audio. "That's all you're worth." I rubbed my face with both hands, tried to breathe slow. Didn't help. The silence pressed down on me until I stood up again and started pacing. Past the fridge, the bookshelf, the small dining table where I used to imagine she and I might one day share breakfast. I stopped by the counter and pulled the $5 bill from my pocket. I laid it flat on the surface like I was studying evidence. It wasn't just a bill, it was a message, and not just from Clarissa. It unlocked a door I'd nailed shut years ago, long before her. I remember being 10, maybe 11, sitting on a plastic folding chair in the kitchen while the grown-ups took all the real seats. Thanksgiving. My older brothers, Mark, Stephen, and Caleb, got to sit at the big table with our parents, laughing about college and jobs and football. I passed the mashed potatoes around like a waiter. No one asked me how school was going. No one noticed I hadn't touched my plate. It wasn't that they were cruel. They just didn't see me. I was the youngest, the quiet one, the one who got Mark's old jackets, Stephen's old cleats, and Caleb's leftover advice. They were stars. I was background. I walked to the bookshelf and opened a small drawer underneath. Inside was a stack of photos I hadn't looked at in years. One of them, me, about 13, sitting on the porch in a hand-me-down hoodie 2 sizes too big. I was smiling, but not with my eyes. Clarissa's voice cut through the memory like glass. He's just the poor one from a messy family. She'd said it 2 days ago. I'd picked her up from a brunch with her friends. One of them asked if I was that Adrian she was dating. She laughed, sipped her mimosa, and said it loud enough for the whole table. I didn't react. I smiled, nodded, played along. God, how many times had I played along? I stared at the $5 bill again, now lying under the kitchen light. And I swear, for a second, I thought about texting her. Maybe if I apologized, softened my words, she'd say it was just a joke. Maybe she didn't mean it. Maybe I was just being too sensitive. I opened my phone, typed, "Hey," deleted it, typed again. "Clarissa, backspaced it all. My eyes caught the edge of something white on the floor near the couch. I walked over. It was the napkin from the restaurant, crumpled, flattened on one side, where I must have stepped on it coming in. I picked it up. It still held the shape of my fist. That napkin looked exactly how I felt. Creased, bent, almost torn, but still holding together. And in that moment, I knew, if I hit send, if I let her make this my fault, I'd stay crumpled forever. I gripped the napkin again, but this time I didn't crush it. I folded it once, twice, then laid it gently on the counter next to the $5 bill. I whispered into the quiet room, more to myself than to anyone else, "Never again." But saying those words was easy. The hard part was proving them true. Proving those words true meant facing things I'd spent a lifetime running from. The following Saturday, I found myself pulling up to my parents' house in the suburbs. Same white shutters, same sun-bleached lawn gnomes by the walkway. I parked under the old oak tree that always dropped acorns on your windshield no matter the season. My hands rested on the steering wheel for a long while before I stepped out. I hadn't planned to come. I never really did. But my mom called earlier that week, said everyone was coming over, even Mark from Dallas. "Just stop by, Adrian," she said. "It'll be nice." She always said that like it hadn't been 20 years of not nice. The second I stepped inside, the familiar scent hit me, lemon cleaner and pot roast. The hallway was still lined with family photos. There was Mark holding his law school diploma, Stephen in his army uniform, Caleb at his wedding in Cancun. No picture of me. I walked into the living room, and there they were, exactly where I expected them. My brothers, all a few inches taller now, bellies a little softer, voices louder. They filled the room the way they always had. Like their presence was the main event, and I was the audience. Dad was in his usual chair by the TV, reading something on his tablet. He barely looked up. "Hey, son," he said flatly. Not Adrian, not even a smile. Just, "Son." Dinner was already being served. I grabbed a plate and sat at the end of the table. The others talked over each other like it was a competition. "Closed on the lake house last week," Mark announced between bites of ham. "Got the promotion. District manager now," Stephen added with a proud grin. Even Caleb, who'd been in and out of jobs, found something to boast about. Thinking of opening a food truck. Tacos. Houston's always hot for tacos. I took a sip of water, waiting for someone to ask me about, well, anything. No one did. When I finally cleared my throat and said, "I've been working on a few investments," my father cut me off with a wave of his fork. "Let your brothers talk. You've got nothing pressing anyway." The words didn't sting like they used to. They sliced clean through. And not because I hadn't heard worse, but because he still didn't see me. It wasn't anger I felt, not yet. Just a cold, quiet detachment. A silence I'd worn like a second skin since childhood. Then, without warning, my sister-in-law Lauren, Mark's wife, turned to me and said, So, how's Clarissa? She seems classy. Met her at the engagement party last year, remember? The table quieted for a moment. Not because anyone cared, but because they wanted gossip. I smiled. That tight, practiced one that doesn't reach your eyes. She's doing fine. And just like that, the conversation moved on. I chewed slowly, hearing her voice in my head again. That's all you're worth. $5 lousy. That lie I told? She's fine. That wasn't to protect her. That was me, still begging for approval from people who wouldn't notice if I vanished. After dinner, the others stayed in the kitchen, arguing about politics or something just as loud. I slipped into the den. It smelled like old carpet and pine. The room hadn't changed much. Dad's old recliner was still in the corner, the bookshelf with the creaky middle shelf. I pulled it open, not really knowing why, maybe just needing a reason to be away from them. And then I saw it. Tucked inside a manila folder marked Old Taxes, my name scribbled faintly in the corner, were papers I'd hidden years ago. I pulled them out, heart starting to thud. Statements, investment portfolios, copies of the trust fund I'd started with a modest check from a college side hustle and turned into something real, accounts no one here knew about. Numbers that proved I wasn't some wandering little brother trying to catch up. I had surpassed them quietly, privately, without fanfare or applause. I held the folder for a moment, staring at the papers. Then I looked up at the wall. There they were. Mark with his big fake smile, Stephen saluting, Caleb holding a margarita by the beach. No space for me. And for the first time, I realized the silence I'd carried all these years could become my greatest weapon. It had been 4 days since the family dinner. 4 days since I stood in that den holding proof that I wasn't the forgotten kid they kept pegging me as. That quiet flicker of self-worth hadn't left me. It moved with me now, steady and patient, like a spark under ash. So when Jeremy, the guy from accounting, waved me down near the elevator Tuesday afternoon and said, "Drinks on the rooftop bar tonight, happy hour, you in?" I heard myself say yes before I could second guess. I told myself it was just a break from the week, some air, some noise, but deep down, I knew I was craving more. Not alcohol, not company, clarity. The rooftop bar was the kind of place Clarissa used to drag me to. Glass railings, neon cocktails, overpriced finger food. The kind where people pretended to have deep conversations while checking who walked in behind them. I arrived just past 7. Jeremy was already there with 2 others from our floor, laughing about something I missed and didn't bother to ask about. I nodded, ordered a whiskey neat, and leaned back against the steel counter. That's when I saw her. Clarissa, dressed in a blood-red dress that clung to her like it was stitched in anger. She was leaning into a man's shoulder, her laughter rising above the music like a blade. I blinked, thinking maybe I'd imagined it, but then she tilted her head back, caught my eye, and smiled. My grip on the glass tightened. She didn't break her gaze. Instead, she whispered something to the man beside her, some silver-haired, smug-looking guy in a navy suit. He glanced my way. Then came her voice, loud and sharp enough to slice the music. "That's the guy I told you about, $5 Adrian." Laughter exploded around their table. The man offered her a glass of champagne with a flourish, like it was part of some inside joke. I felt my face go hot. Not from embarrassment. No, not anymore. This was different. This was rage. A cleaner kind. The kind that doesn't scream. Jeremy looked between us, his smile fading. "Isn't that your—" "Not anymore," I said, cutting him off. I stood, walked straight toward her without thinking. My heartbeat was steady. My hands didn't shake. Clarissa watched me come. She was ready to win again, but I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cause a scene. I leaned just close enough for her to hear me over the buzz. "Careful, Clarissa," I said evenly. "Mock me once, shame on me. Mock me twice. You won't like the ending." The laughter around her died like someone had flipped a switch. Her date blinked, scoffed, and muttered, "Get lost, pal." But Clarissa didn't move. For a moment, just a beat, her smirk dropped. She stared, and I saw something flicker. Not fear, not yet, but confusion. I walked away without another word. Back at our table, Jeremy whistled low. "Man, what was that?" I shook my head, not ready to unpack it. "Nothing important." The rest of the night blurred. I left early, walking to the garage instead of calling a rideshare. The air was sticky with city heat, and my shoes echoed on the concrete like accusations. Was that strength? Or just wounded pride talking? I wanted to believe I'd turned a corner, that speaking up meant I was healing. But part of me worried I'd only fed the fire. Her voice still echoed in my skull, $5 Adrian, like she'd branded it across my skin. Still, there was something else ringing louder now. My own voice. Mock me once. It hadn't trembled, hadn't cracked. Back in the car, I stared at my reflection in the dark window for a long time. I didn't flinch. I didn't look away. Then my phone buzzed. I glanced down, expecting a message from Jeremy or a work ping, but the number was unknown. The message read, "Careful what you threaten. Some people don't forgive." I froze. Not because I was afraid yet, but because this wasn't Clarissa's style. That wasn't her tone. It was colder, calculated. My fingers hovered over the screen, debating whether to reply. I didn't, but I knew one thing. Whatever this was, it had just shifted. I didn't know it then, but the game had just escalated, and the first shot wasn't mine. I stared at the message on my phone until the screen dimmed and disappeared. I didn't respond. I didn't have to. That kind of threat didn't need acknowledgement. It needed preparation. And if the game had really escalated, as I suspected, then I had no choice but to meet it head on. That Sunday evening, I found myself driving toward my parents' house, the same suburban brick home I'd grown up in, where everything smelled like old coffee and wood polish and faintly of memories that never belonged to me. I wasn't ready, but I knew if I didn't show up for dinner, they'd talk anyway. And the version of the story that made its way around the table wouldn't be mine. I pulled into the driveway just after 6, deliberately late. The porch light was already on. From inside, I could hear the low hum of voices and the scrape of silverware against porcelain. A normal evening, just another family dinner. And yet, my gut was tight, like I was walking into a trap. The door creaked as I stepped inside. My mother peeked out from the kitchen, drying her hands on a dish towel. She gave me a smile too practiced to be warm. "Try not to cause trouble tonight, okay?" she whispered, stepping closer. Everyone's already tense. It was always like this. I was expected to be the calm one, the silent one, the buffer. Even now, with Clarissa's laugh still echoing in my ears from days ago, and the shadow of a threat hanging over me, I was still the one who had to keep things smooth. I gave her a stiff nod and followed the sound of voices into the dining room. The table was full. My 2 older brothers sat at either end like bookends. Matthew in a tailored shirt, talking about his latest corporate milestone, and Daniel in his weekend blazer, bragging about closing on a second investment property. Their wives nodded and smiled in all the right places. Their kids, mercifully occupied with tablets, didn't look up. No one offered me a seat, so I pulled out a chair near the middle, across from a bowl of undercooked green beans. "Glad you could make it," Matthew said without looking at me. "Busy weekend?" I didn't answer. I just reached for my water. Then Daniel leaned forward. "So, Clarissa, heard she's moving on pretty quick. Some guy from the River Oaks set?" My hand froze mid-air. I didn't blink. Matthew smirked. "Word is, she left because things weren't stable, financially. Or maybe she just got tired of waiting for you to do something with yourself." I stayed silent. "She always did have expensive taste," Daniel added, chewing loudly. "You probably should have pushed harder, career-wise. I mean, you've always been kind of comfortable, haven't you?" There it was, Clarissa's voice, just dressed in different mouths. My chest tightened. I felt the old reflex rise. Nod, take it, pretend it didn't matter. But something in me wouldn't let it go this time. Something forged in that rooftop bar, refined in silence for too long. I set my glass down slowly and looked up. "You've mistaken silence for weakness," I said, my voice steady. "Don't." The clatter of forks stopped. For once, even the kids looked up. My father, sitting at the head of the table, narrowed his eyes. "Watch your tone." "No," I said. "Not this time." A bead of silence stretched thin across the room. "You think because you play it quiet and mysterious, that makes you better than us now?" Daniel snapped. "I think because I don't need to broadcast everything I've earned, it unsettles you," I replied. Matthew let out a low laugh, disbelieving. "Earned? Please, what exactly have you done that we haven't already surpassed?" "I don't need your approval," I said, "and I definitely don't need to explain my worth at a dinner table built on dismissing it." My mother reached out, touching my arm. "Adrian, let's just keep things peaceful. You don't have to." "Yes, I do." My voice didn't rise, but it cut. "Because if I don't now, I never will." I stood up. My chair scraped loudly across the floor. I came here thinking maybe I'd find a little support. Maybe something resembling family. Instead, I find that you've all been listening to Clarissa more than you've ever listened to me. No one stopped me as I walked out. The last thing I saw was my father shaking his head, like I was a child who'd misbehaved. Outside, the night had grown thick and quiet. I climbed into my car, the silence inside almost comforting. For a moment, I just sat there, gripping the steering wheel, my breath shallow and fast. I didn't know if I'd just burned a bridge or finally built one for myself. Then my phone buzzed, another unknown number. "Keep talking, and you'll regret it." No name, no signature, just cold intent. I leaned back in my seat and stared at the dark sky above the streetlights. Somewhere along the way, this had stopped being about a dinner, a date, even a family. This was war. The streetlights cast long bands of shadow across my dashboard as I sat in the car, replaying the Sunday dinner like a broken record inside my head. The message, "Keep talking and you'll regret it," hurt more than any insult. It wasn't a taunt. It was a promise. And I'd spent my life letting people make promises about me without ever pushing back. I left the driveway with the engine low, trying to shake off the tension. My knuckles felt stiff from gripping the steering wheel. I headed halfway to a cafe I knew, one tucked in a corner of Midtown Houston, modest, quiet, friendly to someone who wanted to think and not be heard. I walked in around noon, pulled off my jacket, and sat down at a window table. My laptop lay open but untouched. I needed a place to wait things out, to feel the air, to listen. I ordered black coffee, strong, no nonsense. Then I overheard them, a pair of colleagues I recognized talking at the table near the counter, just loud enough. "Did you hear? Clarissa said he begged her for money. He's always been desperate, right? Just poor decisions from the start." Each word landed like a blow. I could feel the heat rise, but I stayed still, sipping my coffee. I studied their reflection in the window. One of them glanced over at me, eyes darting away immediately. This was no casual gossip. This was character assassination, a campaign, a trap I hadn't seen coming. My heart pounded, but my mind raced. If they thought that, what else had she spread? Who had believed her lies already? I closed my laptop, stood, and walked out. No part of me wanted to stay quiet anymore. Not this time. That evening, I attended a small networking mixer for a regional business group. It was the kind of event Clarissa loved. Glossy room, wine glasses clinking, social media types scanning for status updates. I entered with confident steps, though my gut clenched. She was there, center stage in her usual way, draped over some successful-looking man, laughing like she'd already won. She glanced at me. I nodded faintly. She raised an eyebrow and smiled. Later, at her table, she leaned into the mic area next to the speakers and asked loudly, "Some men just don't know how to provide, right?" Her voice sweet, mocking, directed at me. Laughter echoed from around the room. Glasses clinked. Whispered agreement drifted. I swallowed hard. The sting was familiar, but sharper now. Because this wasn't a date. It was public, premeditated, polished. I walked toward them, weaving through the crowd until I reached the table. The chatter dropped. A hush as people realized what was happening. Everyone watching. Cameras poised, phones lifting. I stopped just short of her, smiled, chest calm. "It's funny you assume you know the numbers," I said quietly, but loud enough. "Maybe check who signed the lease on this venue." Silence. Her smirk flickered. The man she'd been with stiffened. Heads turned. I heard a gasp. She opened her mouth to respond, but I cut across gently. "Assumptions are dangerous, Clarissa." She blinked. The room paused, and then I turned and walked away, without another word. Outside afterward, I walked through the lobby to the parking garage, my breath slow but my mind alight with possibilities I'd never allowed myself. Strength and fear tangled inside me. Part of me thrilled at what I'd done. Another part questioned whether I'd tipped my hand too early. Back in the car, I stared at my reflection in the mirror, my jaw set. I was no longer someone who could be dismissed lightly. But at what cost? My phone buzzed. I glanced down. Email from an unknown address. Attachment, a document, my name partially blacked out. The subject line read, "Next time, we erase you completely." I sat in silence. The air inside the car felt heavy, electric. This wasn't just whispers anymore. Someone was coming for my very existence. The email still burned in my mind when I stepped into the office the next morning. The silence wasn't silence. It was the kind of quiet that watches you. Sideways glances, whispered greetings. One colleague smiled too quickly, another avoided my eyes altogether. Something had shifted. Before I even reached my desk, Michelle from legal stopped me in the hallway. She spoke low, almost like she didn't want to hear herself say it. "Adrian, have you seen this?" She handed me a folder, already open to the center. It was a printout of a contract I had approved 6 months ago. Only now, the signature looked slightly off. My name was there, but blurred at the edges, like it had been dragged across the page by a clumsy hand with Photoshop and no shame. "They're saying you forged this," she whispered. My heart thudded in place. "Who's they?" She glanced around. Does it matter? It did, but not as much as the realization that this was no longer some passive-aggressive smear. Someone had doctored my signature. Someone had taken the time to weaponize a deal I'd helped close cleanly, and now they were throwing it like mud on polished glass. I thanked her, walked to my office, closed the door, locked it. Then I sat down and stared at the paper. That was when I understood. Clarissa wasn't acting alone. This wasn't personal spite anymore. This was coordinated, and it was working. A few hours later, I found myself sitting in the weekly leadership briefing. 12 of us around a glass-topped boardroom table, fake smiles and bottled water, laptops open like shields. The air conditioning ran too cold, the lighting too bright. That's when Jared, one of Clarissa's social circle friends, now positioned in operations, leaned back in his chair and dropped the hammer. "Before we wrap," he said casually, "I think it's worth asking, if management can't verify every signature on our external contracts, doesn't that raise bigger concerns about trust?" The room stiffened. My pulse slammed once, hard against my ribs. I turned my head slowly. Jared didn't look at me. He looked down at his tablet as if the words had just occurred to him. I breathed in once, just once. Then I said, "Trust is earned, and forged lies burn fast." A long pause. No one spoke. No one moved. I could feel every heartbeat in the room but my own. Jared shifted in his seat. The tension didn't explode. It lingered like gas waiting for a spark. After the meeting, I didn't go straight home. I sat in my office for over an hour. Lights dimmed. Contract still open on my desk. The fake one. The one with my name twisted out of shape. I thought about my father. How he used to say, "Your name is your honor. When that's gone, all that's left is noise." And for the first time in years, I felt close to breaking. I wanted to leave it all. Pack up, disappear, vanish before they could erase me completely. But then, my phone buzzed. A call from Marcus, my godson, 15, brilliant, brutally honest, like most teens with nothing to prove. "Uncle A." "Yeah. I heard something at school. Some kid said you faked a deal or something. That true?" I exhaled. "No, kid, it's not. I figured. I told them that. You're not the type. You don't fake stuff. You show up." He didn't say it to comfort me. He said it because he believed it. That was worse and better. That kind of trust was dangerous. It demanded action. After we hung up, I sat in the dark a little longer. Then I stood, turned on the lights, sat back down, and opened my laptop. I didn't plan to shout. I didn't plan to defend myself with declarations or emails. I started slow. I pulled old contracts, original PDFs, metadata. I pulled receipts, IP logs. I contacted vendors who had seen me sign that same document in person. Then I began organizing it. Names, dates, edits. I didn't need to shout. I just needed the truth to be ready when it mattered most. "They think they've cornered me," I muttered, saving a folder into an encrypted drive. "They don't know I've already built the exit." The screen dimmed. The room grew quiet again. Just as I was about to close my laptop, a new notification popped up. Another email. No name. Just one line in the subject. "Board vote in 3 days. Better pack your desk." I stared at it. No attachment this time. Just the words. Like a warning carved into stone. 3 days. That's all I had. And I used every hour. The morning of the vote, the sky hung low over the city like a lid waiting to clamp shut. I arrived early, before anyone else, dressed in the charcoal suit I used to wear only for funerals and contract signings. This time, it was for both. Something was going to die today, and something else had to begin. I carried only one item with me, a slim black folder. No briefcase, no laptop, just paper. Tangible truth. The boardroom was already half filled when I walked in. Suits lined the table, their eyes dancing between coffee and discomfort. Whispers stalled as I entered, but I didn't flinch. I walked to my seat, sat down slowly, and placed the folder on the polished wood in front of me. Clarissa was there, of course, across the table, wearing confidence like a perfume, too thick, too sweet, like it was trying to cover up something sour underneath. Her smile caught my eye. It wasn't joy, it was triumph rehearsed. "Glad you could make it," she said brightly. "This won't take long." I nodded once. "No, it won't." The CEO cleared his throat, muttered through opening formalities. Then, predictably, Clarissa took the floor. "I know today's vote is about direction, leadership, and trust," she began, her voice rehearsed. "And unfortunately, not everyone at this table deserves that trust." She held up a document, a new version of the contract at the heart of the recent chaos. "This," she said, waving it like a winning hand, "is the original agreement. As you can see, Mr. Walker's name is nowhere on it. In fact, he was never involved." She passed copies around. "I've had it verified. Forensic review confirms the original file's metadata. His name was added after the fact, illegally." Her smile widened. "And that," she said with a shrug, "is forgery." Gasps, low murmurs. I felt the wave of humiliation begin to rise around me again, threatening to pull me under just like it had before. But I didn't move. Not yet. I waited until the last page landed at the far end of the table. Then I reached forward, opened my folder, and calmly slid a single sheet into the center of the table. "No rebuttal?" Clarissa teased. "Silences?" "Interesting timing," I said, cutting through her words. "But tell me, did you check the metadata?" The room paused. All eyes shifted. "Excuse me?" she said. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. I tapped the folder again. "What you have is a manipulated image of a digital file, created on your laptop at 2:14 a.m. last Thursday. I have the server logs. I also have the notarized version of the original contract, signed in person, witnessed, and archived securely." Clarissa scoffed. "You're bluffing." I stood. A small screen behind me lit up. I'd connected it earlier, quietly, before anyone arrived. Click. The projection showed the document history. Timestamps, signatures, IP, addresses. Click. An email chain from the vendor, confirming my meeting with them, complete with a photo of the signing, me, pen in hand, time-stamped by their internal system. Click. And finally, a log from the security software at the office, showing Clarissa's credentials used to access the archived files at an odd hour. I didn't say a word as each slide flicked by. The room didn't need narration. The truth was reading itself. By the time I looked back, her expression had cracked. "This is manipulation," she tried, her voice brittle. A board member, David from compliance, leaned forward. "Enough," he said sharply. "The evidence is clear. You accessed protected files without permission and altered them. You compromised the integrity of this firm." Her chair scraped as she stood. "This is a setup. He's always been jealous." "No," I cut in quietly. I was silent. "That's not the same thing." She stared at me. For the first time since this all began, her eyes showed something other than contempt. Panic. I didn't enjoy it. I didn't smile. I just folded the boardroom's crisp white linen napkin, neatly, precisely, and placed it beside my empty coffee cup. It was the same motion I made that night at the restaurant when she humiliated me in front of strangers, except now I wasn't crumpling under pressure. I was standing. I buttoned my jacket. The vote didn't need to happen. It was done. The room had already decided. I turned and began walking toward the door. Behind me, I heard her voice, cracking, small, desperate. "Adrian, please, don't leave me like this." Her words echoed down the hallway, but for once, they no longer chained me. Her voice trailed behind me like smoke, fading with each step I took down that hallway. I didn't stop. I didn't look back. When the elevator doors closed, I exhaled, long and quiet. It wasn't victory I felt, not exactly. It was release. A few days passed before I realized just how heavy silence could be when it wasn't forced on you. No one called with threats. No new rumors bubbled up. The city, for once, felt like it was exhaling with me. That evening, I sat in my study, a place I used to avoid. Too many unfinished ideas, too many reminders of things I'd postponed in the name of keeping peace or proving worth. Now I just sat in the old leather chair, watching the shadows on the bookshelf stretch as the sun dipped behind the neighbor's roofline. It was quiet. No buzzing phone, no tension waiting to pounce, just quiet. And in that stillness, my thoughts circled back to the beginning, how a $5 joke turned into a battle for my identity. I hadn't planned to fight. I hadn't even known how. But life has a strange way of handing you the tools you swore you'd never need. By the end of the week, the news was everywhere. Clarissa had been stripped of her seat, formally reprimanded by the board, and quietly released from her consulting contracts. The empire she'd built on charm and insinuation collapsed under the weight of truth. One of the interns, Mia, I think her name was, passed me in the hallway and said, "She's been outside your building 3 times this week, waiting." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Later that night, I found the stack. Voicemails, all from her. I played one, just one. Static, then her voice, ragged and soaked in something that might have been regret. "Adrian, I don't know what else to say. I didn't think it'd go this far. I thought you'd stay quiet like always. Please, can we talk?" I sat still for a long time, phone in my hand. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't aching either. What I felt was tired. I whispered, not to her, not to anyone, but to the space around me. "Mercy doesn't mean forgetting. It means I won't carry you with me anymore." The next morning, I met Caleb, my godson, for breakfast at that corner diner he liked. We hadn't had time together in weeks. He was growing fast, voice deeper, eyes more aware. Over pancakes and orange juice, he asked, "Uncle A, did you win?" I sipped my coffee before answering. "I didn't lose myself. That's better." He nodded slowly. "Some kids at school said you were in trouble, but I told them you weren't like that. I knew you wouldn't lie." I looked at him, really looked. Never let someone else tell you your worth. That's not their job. He grinned. "Like you did?" I smiled back. "Exactly like that." That evening, I joined a few friends for dinner. Nothing fancy. Just good people, warm food, laughter that didn't come with a cost. As we finished, I reached for my napkin. It was cloth, white, crisp. I folded it carefully, not in anger, not to steel myself, just because it felt right. The same motion that once held defiance now held peace. It wasn't a shield anymore. It was closure. After dinner, I walked home. The night was cool, early fall pressing in. Streetlights painted gold patches on the pavement. I passed people I didn't know, faces wrapped in their own lives. And for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel like I had to shrink or scan for danger. My steps were slow, unhurried. I knew the scars from this season of my life wouldn't vanish overnight. Some marks stay, but they no longer dictated my story. They were just part of it, lines in the book, not the title. I turned the corner toward my building, hands in my coat pockets, and glanced up at the dark sky. No stars tonight, just clouds moving somewhere else. And I thought to myself, because sometimes the cruelest words can break you. But if you rise, they also make you unbreakable.